All right, so on his recent podcast, Joe Rogan responded to what I've dubbed the dumbest controversy ever in this election cycle around his, I don't even want to call it an endorsement of Bernie Sanders.
Said he'll probably
vote for him.
And that he loves Tulsi and that he loves Andrew Yang because Joe is an anti-establishment guy and generally socially progressive. It really did make me sad because one of the things that Joe said was that he's probably done with politics, that after this, that he doesn't really want anything to do with it, and that the real issue he has is that his podcast, where he just gets to screw around with his friends and comics, has become so big that it can actually influence elections. And it just demonstrates...
Which is true.
Which, A, is true, but it's so terrible that you can't engage in an honest political discussion in this country without being viciously attacked by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the entire mainstream media, and be created into a political football, taking your comments completely out of context and smearing you in the most disgusting language. MoveOn.org and the Human Rights Campaign, all of these people just, went after Joe Rogan in a disgraceful way. And it just shows you how some of the best voices in this country, they don't want to touch politics for this reason, is that it's nasty. And most people don't have the ability to stand up. And I mean, Joe has a bigger platform than the entire mainstream media.
Right.
And even he's like, I don't need this.
I don't need this. And he doesn't. I don't blame him one bit.
Right.
I mean, it was funny, and he talked about this too. It was ironic that in the comments he was making about why he likes Sanders, he was saying, look, anybody, if you take their comments out of context over, their lifetime, you can smear them as this or as that. And with Sanders, there's very little. It's very hard to do. There's very little of that. And so then in this controversy, what did people disingenuously turn around and do? Take his comments out of context and use it to say he's racist, he's a transphobe, he's a sexist, et cetera, et cetera. It's also this, it's just such a part of a broader culture. Any of you who are online have, I'm sure, experienced the same phenomenon where you take one thing out of context or, interpret it a nasty way and then use it to say you as a person are toxic or you are problematic or you are racist or you are sexist. And first of all, comics, it's their job to push the limits, right? Every comic, it's worth their salt.
That's how you laugh.
Is going to push the limit and sometimes go a little too far. That's part of the job. So there's that to start with. But then to take that and then use it to smear a candidate who's like loosely associated with that person, the whole thing is just completely insane. So I don't blame him one bit for saying, I don't need this, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm kind of sad to hear it though,
it's
honestly,
a very low.
I love his take on politics.
Exactly. It's a very low point for culture, but I do think it's ascendant because overall what's going to happen is Joe might bow out, but the rest of us are going to say, you know what, screw this, and we're going to continue to speak out. I think that explains the rise of this show, so many other different voices, is that we're willing to fight back whenever people attack and smear and take things out of context, because the truth is, we don't need them anymore.
It's the coalition of the canceled.
It is.
We're like,
go ahead, screw it.
We'll all be canceled together.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you want to cancel me? Fine, do it.
Fine. There's hundreds of hours of me talking. I'm sure it's some stupid things. But I do think it's a low point, but also a transitionary period for media, for politics, and for history. And that in the end, Joe Rogan will herald the beginning of a new media era, even if he decides not to talk about politics.
Well, because look at what's happened, right? Since Bernie was canceled for accepting Joe's endorsement, which wasn't even really endorsement, he's only gone up in the polls.
Yeah.
So it tells you everything you need to know about how most of America thinks about these kinds of dynamics and conversations. All right, we'll have more for you after this.